Honestly, my favorite time of the year on the YouTube channel is the NFL Draft, as I love talking about these different players, the stories, and the guys who are going up and down. I'm definitely planning on doing a ton of full-length features this offseason, but today I want to talk about 15 guys who I think are currently going under the radar in this year's draft class. Some of them are listed near the top of the draft, while others are kind of guys that are forgotten about or have slipped to the later rounds. As I said, I'm going to introduce you to 15 different draft prospects I think are sleepers this year. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's go ahead and get started and talk about 15 sleepers for the 2025 NFL Draft. Okay, so before we can get started though, be sure to check out my NFL Draft playlist, as I've already done videos on guys like Luther Burden, Mike Green, Seth Hennigan, Tetairoa McMillan, Brady Cook, and even Matthew Golden. I'd appreciate you checking those out, and the playlist will be updated throughout the next couple of months. Okay, so the first guy that I want to talk about in today's video as a sleeper is going to be Devin Neal from Kansas. Devin Neal has a great story, as he is as KU as possible. He ended up growing up in Lawrence, Kansas, and went to Lawrence High School. While he was a senior, he rushed for nearly 1,300 yards and 20 touchdowns, and the four-star recruit decided to stay home and play for Kansas. Neal ended up having a strong 4-year career with the Jayhawks, as during his time there, he went for over 1,000 yards in 3 straight years, and his 2023 and 2024 seasons were incredible. He had over 1,200 yards and 16 touchdowns in both 2023 and 2024, and went down as the best running back in Kansas football history. You'd think he'd be ranked a little bit higher, but honestly right now, he's only listed as a 5th round pick and the 141st overall prospect in NFL Mock Database. I think Neal is one of those running backs who's going to blow up at the next level, and what's holding him back is the idea that he went to Kansas. Our second guy is from a former Big 12 school in Oklahoma, and that is Billy Bowman Jr. He ended up going to Ryan High School in Denton, Texas, and was actually a superstar while he was there. He played on a loaded team and actually played alongside Seth Hennigan, who will be in the video later, and he originally committed to play to Texas before flipping over to Oklahoma. Bowman was a top 40 recruit and the number 2 athlete in the class of 2021. Bowman ended up being productive all 4 years while he was in Oklahoma, but his best season came in 2023, as he ended up having 63 tackles, 4 pass deflections, and 6 interceptions, 3 of which went to the house. I'm not sure why he didn't declare for the 2024 NFL Draft, but he came back this season, and despite Oklahoma falling off a bit, he still put up really good numbers, and Bowman is an insane athlete who's been productive for 4 years. Despite how talented I think he is, he's a projected 4th round pick and the 122nd overall player according to the NFL Mock Database, but I think Bowman should go in the 2nd or 3rd round instead of the 4th or 5th. Up next, we're going to get to our first wide receiver on the list, and that is Tai Felton. Tai Felton ended up coming out of Ashburn, Virginia, and went to Stonebridge High School. He decided to commit to the University of Maryland coming out of high school, and it was only listed as a 3-star recruit. He was already on a path to being a hidden gem. Felton would spend all 4 years of his career at Maryland, and he ended up blowing up this past season as a senior. Felton was near the top of the Big Ten, as he had 96 catches for 1,124 yards and 9 touchdowns. It also came off of an impressive 2023 season. Felton has steadily gotten better each and every year he has been in college, and in playing in one of the best conferences in the Big Ten, you'd expect him to be ranked a little bit higher. Currently, NFL Mock Database has him projected as a 5th round pick and the 142nd overall player, but in the modern NFL, where receivers are super useful, I think Felton should probably be a 3rd or a 4th round pick instead of a 5th round guy. I think he's a sleeper, and like Devin Neal, the school he went to is affecting his grade. Getting to our second running back of the day, let's talk about Kyle Monangai. He ended up coming out of Rutgers, and originally going to Seton Hall Prep School in New Jersey, he would transfer to Don Bosco, where he put up nearly 1,000 yards and 11 touchdowns. Despite good numbers at a big school, he was ranked as the number 160 running back in his class, and Monangai would have to end up going to Rutgers. Nothing against Rutgers, but they were at the lower end of the Power 4. Monangai put a lot of the haters to rest though, as he blew up in 2022 with 445 yards and 2 touchdowns, and then in both 2023 and 2024, he went over the 1,200 yard mark. This past season, he had a career-high 13 touchdowns, and Monangai will go down as one of the best running backs in Rutgers history, with over 3,000 yards and 27 career scores. Despite the inept offense, he ended up becoming an All-Big Ten second-team selection, but currently Monangai is a projected 6th round pick. He's also listed as the 168th overall prospect, but this guy's kind of similar to Devin Neal in my eyes, as the Rutgers name is hurting him, but I think he could end up being a steal. If you're to talk about a player who truly came out of nowhere in 2024, it's Jalen Royals. He's a wide receiver coming out of Utah State, and originally he went to Hillgrove High School in Powder Springs, Georgia. He had pedestrian numbers, so he ended up having to go to Georgia Military College at first. Because of that, he was a 0-star recruit and really had to work his way up. Royals, though, would eventually get over to Utah State, where he played in both 2023 and 2024. Royals had 71 catches for 1,000 yards and 15 touchdowns in 2023, and this season ended up having 55 catches for 834 yards and 6 touchdowns. Despite the drop in production, scouts do not seem to be concerned, as currently according to NFL Mock Database, he's a projected 3rd round pick and the 77th overall receiver. He's got a 5% chance of going in the 1st round, and he is the yearly group of 5 receiver that blows up. Ultimately, I think he's just going under the radar because people don't really know about him, but I bet he'll end up being a day 2 pick. A couple days ago I did a video on Seth Hennigan, and I still think the guy is going under the radar. As I said, he was actually teammates with Billy Bowman Jr. while at Denton Ryan, but Hennigan was only a 3-star recruit who ended up going to Memphis. With an injury to Grant Gunnell, Hennigan took over as a freshman and never gave up the starting job. He had over 3,000 yards and 20 touchdowns in each of the 4 years he played at Memphis, and ended up becoming one of the best quarterbacks in conference history. In a long pedigree of good quarterbacks at Memphis, including guys like Paxton Lynch, Riley Ferguson, and Brady White, Seth Hennigan puts his name pretty much at the top. But for some reason, Hennigan is projected as an undrafted free agent and the 290th overall quarterback. Honestly, I'd take him over guys like Curtis Rourke, Riley Leonard, or Brady Cook, but I guess some are worried about his level of competition and some flaws in his mechanics. I don't really know. The Iowa Hawkeyes always seem to have a good tight end prospect, and this year they have a guy by the name of Luke Lachey. The Hawkeyes have been producing great tight ends, and coming out of Grandview Heights, Ohio, Lachey ended up becoming a 4-star recruit and the number 6 tight end in the class of 2020. Ended up taking him a bit of time to get going at Iowa, but this past season, he ended up becoming one of the better tight ends in the country with 28 catches for 231 yards. Yes, he failed to catch a touchdown, but again, you have to remember how horrible Iowa's offense is, and he's also 6'6". He has the makings of a good tight end prospect, which is why some think he could get drafted, but others think he's an undrafted guy. Ultimately, the tight end spot is typically a wild card, but with his physical measurements and him coming out of Iowa, I'm sure a team will grab him in day 3, and I think this guy is a sleeper despite the poor production. One of the best stories in the 2025 draft class is running back Marcus Yarns. Coming out of Salisbury, Maryland, he eventually went to Parkside High School where he played multiple sports and was an incredible running back and safety. Sadly, after rushing for 1,500 yards and 12 touchdowns, he would have a terrible injury, which would cause his recruiting stock to fall off. He ended up becoming a 0-star recruit and would have to go to Delaware to play college football. That's not exactly known as a spot to send you to the NFL, but Yarns would really produce. In 2023, he had nearly 1,000 yards and 15 touchdowns, and then this past year at the Blue Hens, he had 844 yards and 6 touchdowns. He became one of the best running backs in school history and one of the top draft prospects out of the FCS. Yarns is still projected as a 7th round pick. He's listed as the 221st overall player, and I think a lot of that is due to the perception around the FCS and especially Delaware. I think Yarns is a sleeper and someone that could sneak up draft boards closer to draft night. One thing I'm always impressed by is when a 5-star recruit gets punched in the face and manages to come back in his career. That's pretty much the story of Ja'Cory Brooks, as he originally went to Booker T. Washington High School in Florida, but would transfer to IMG Academy after putting up crazy numbers. Ja'Cory Brooks was listed as a 5-star recruit and the number 2 receiver in his class, and he'd arrive at Alabama with a ton of fanfare. He showed a lot of promise early on while he was at Bama, but after nearly 700 yards and 8 touchdowns in 2022, Brooks would completely fall off in 2023 before he'd have to make a transfer. He'd end up going to the Louisville Cardinals and became the number 1 option for Tyler Shuck. He also replaced Jamari Thrash's production. This past season with the Cards, he had 61 catches for 1,013 yards and 9 touchdowns, and Brooks went from a guy who was an afterthought to now playing his way back into the conversation. NFL Mock Database has him as an undrafted free agent and the 282nd overall player, but I think this guy will definitely sneak into day 3, and for someone with former 5-star talent who produced at 2 good schools, I don't know why he's going under the radar so much. We get to our first and only offensive lineman on this year's list, and that guy is Ajani Cornelius. Coming out of Archbishop High School in New York, Ajani Cornelius ended up becoming a big deal, but only had offers to small schools. He decided to commit to Rhode Island, and the 0-star recruit would eventually continue to develop and blossom and became a first-team all-conference selection. Because of that, Cornelius became one of the top transfers in the 2023 portal class, and after starting 2 seasons with the Ducks and becoming a second-team All-American according to some sites, Cornelius is all of a sudden going under the radar. NFL Mock Database has him as a 6th-round pick and the 169th overall prospect, but things aren't adding up here. He started on one of the best offensive lines in the country, has the measurables, and produced. Why is he going to fall to the 6th round? I'm not quite sure. But either way, I think Ajani Cornelius is an absolute steal and a sleeper player in this year's draft. Similar to Ja'Cory Brooks, Theo Wease Jr. was a borderline 5-star recruit coming out of Allen High School in Texas. He originally committed to play at Oklahoma, and Wease was not really able to get things going his first couple of years as a Sooner. His best season came in 2020 with 530 yards and 4 touchdowns, but in 2023, he would transfer to Mizzou. Originally, he was the second option to Luther Burden III, but he still managed to have nearly 700 yards and 6 touchdowns in 2023. In 2024, he actually became the best option on Missouri's team over Luther, finishing with 60 catches for 884 yards and 4 total touchdowns. Wease ended up having a really good career, and he also ran a pretty good 40 time and has the height and length to be an NFL receiver. Currently, Wease is a projected undrafted free agent and the 272nd overall prospect, but at one point, he was considered to be a 3rd or 4th round pick. I'm not sure why he has fallen off, but I think Wease is definitely going to get drafted and is someone the NFL needs to take notes on. Honestly, one guy who sort of fell off was Ashton Gillotte. Gillotte ended up going to Boca Raton High School and became a solid blue chip recruit in his high school class. Gillotte would play 4 years for the Louisville Cardinals, with his best season coming in 2023, finishing with 45 tackles, 11 sacks, and 3 forced fumbles. That's why in the preseason, Gillotte was supposed to be a 1st round pick, but after only having 4.5 sacks in 2024 with Louisville, his stock has suddenly crashed. He's currently a projected 4th round pick and the 115th overall prospect, but I'm split here. Sure, his numbers did fall off a little bit in 2025, but it's typically extremely difficult to replicate those kind of numbers, especially when you have a target on your back. I think Gillotte is definitely going under the radar, and for a guy who was at one point supposed to be a 1st round pick, getting his value in that day 2 or day 3 spot is huge. He's definitely a sleeper to me. Our last receiver we're going to talk about today is Dante Thornton. Coming out of Mount St. Joseph High School, he was a 4-star recruit and one of the top receivers in his high school class. Dante Thornton originally arrived at Oregon, but was not able to see the field a whole lot in his first 2 years. He would decide to transfer to Tennessee for the 2023 season, where he ended up having 1 touchdown. In 2024, he had an interesting year. He had 26 catches for 661 yards with 6 touchdowns. He averaged 25.5 yards per catch, became one of the top options on a good Tennessee team, and also at 6'5" with blazing speed. I guess Thornton is seen as one of those jitterbug receivers that could get better at the NFL level. He never quite had the production, but he has the physical measurables, which is why NFL Mock Database thinks this guy could absolutely blow up. He's currently a projected 5th round pick and the 155th overall prospect, but Thornton could definitely fly higher, and I could see him going day 2. Another guy who has a great story and has had a winding road to college football stardom is Baishul Tuten. He ended up having nearly 4,000 yards and 77 touchdowns in his high school career in New Jersey, but he'd have to settle on North Carolina A&T. Tuten spent a couple of years working his way up the ladder and eventually transferred to Virginia Tech in 2023. He had nearly 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns, and then this past year had 1,200 yards and 15 touchdowns. Tuten ended up setting the combine on fire with his blazing speed, but many think he's too one-dimensional, and also he's not the best pass catcher coming out of the backfield. But again, the guy has absolute blazing speed and is arguably the fastest running back in this year's draft. After the combine, he went from undrafted to potentially a 3rd round pick, but currently NFL Mock Database has him as a 4th rounder. I think Tuten is an absolute sleeper, and if they can get him to catch the ball better, he could be a star. Last but not least, we get another quarterback, and that will be Cam Miller from North Dakota State. Coming out of the state of Iowa, he put up really good numbers and was a dual threat quarterback, and he decided to go to North Dakota State. He would follow in the footsteps of a great lineage of quarterbacks, and Cam Miller ended up having a terrific career for North Dakota State. This past season in particular, he had 3,300 yards with 33 touchdowns and 4 picks, while also rushing for 600 yards and 12 touchdowns. He had double-digit touchdowns and double-digit passes in 4 of his 5 years on campus, and Cam Miller has a ton of experience, is a winner, can both run and pass the ball. For some odd reason, Cam Miller isn't in NFL Mock Database, but current projections think he'll be a priority undrafted free agent. Will he get drafted? I don't know, but I definitely think of any undrafted quarterbacks, Cam Miller probably has the best shot of blowing up. So yeah, today we talked about 15 NFL draft sleepers, and be sure to let me know your thoughts down below. Who of these guys are your favorite, and what players should I include in part 2? I'm sure I could do probably 30 versions of this, so be sure to let me know your favorite draft prospect who should be included in part 2. And also before we go, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, check out my NFL draft playlist, and all the other videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.